Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Second Samuel. We continue from chapter 13 today. It begins this way. Now, after this, the text really says, and then it came to pass. It came to pass after this. Now, it generally means roughly the same, but the emphasis is that after chapter 12 has completed itself, meaning after Solomon was born to David and Bathsheba, the emphasis was this actually happened, this thing happened, and the emphasis is very much on the I would say the pronouncement of God's how should we say God's judgment, right, on David, because he has done this in secret. He has led to the death of Uriah with the sword. He killed him. God said he killed him with the sword of the people of Ammon. This is in Second Samuel chapter 12, starting from verse 9. And God says that because of this, the sword shall not depart from your house, because David had despised me, disregarded me, and has done all these things, although he wasn't caught. But in the eyes of God, he has conducted himself in a very evil manner. And as the sword shall never depart from his house, or not depart from his house, meaning there will be people in his family that will be slain by the sword. And that's basically what it says. Since Uriah died by the sword of the Ammonites. And then it also talks about in verse 11 of chapter 12, it says, "Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up adversity against you from your own house." It's within the house that things will happen, that God will allow your women, I wouldn't say it's wives, your women before your eyes, and give to your neighbors, people who are very close to you, and he shall lie with your women in the sight of this son. And for whatever David has done secretly, God will allow all these atrocious things to happen in public. That would be this idea. And now it came to pass after this, after David has been chastised by God. Now we see what's happening in the house of David. The house of David begins to show us some very important events that has relationship to what God has said in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 9 to 11. Now, this word here, in English, we say it's Absalom, but in Hebrew is Av Shalom. Let me just put it down so that you know. It's Av Shalom. And he is the son of David, probably the eldest son of David. And he had a beautiful sister. Now, this word beautiful needs to be expressed in a more how should we say, in a more literal way. I think it would be very beautiful to the eyes. I think you could say that she was beautiful in appearance, right? This is her appearance. And her name was Tamar. Now, after this said, you find that there's a break here. This would be, and then the story goes that Amnon, the son of David, was in love with her. Now, the Hebrew text doesn't say these words in love with her. The Hebrew text says that Amnon, he loved her. And yeah, it's about the same aspect in the sense that he had feelings for her. He wanted her. I think that would be a better explanation. Although the word is ahav in this case, it actually refers to a very seldom used aspect. To lust after her, to love her in a sexual way, and that would be a more appropriate description in the context of this verse, right? Now, understand this: Amnon and Avshalom are brothers from different mothers. And Tamar is a sister of Avshalom from the same mother. And understand that overall we have the same father. So let me just draw it out this way. So you find that we have Avshalom, and then we have Amnon. And of course, with Avshalom, we have a sister, right? A sister here is Tamar. Now, with this, they share the same father, but both came from different mothers. Then this is important, right? This is important. But just bear this in mind first. Verse 2. But Amnon was so frustrated on account of his sister Tamar. Now, this word here was so frustrated. This is a modern English word. I think you could say that he is. I guess you can say that he is vexed, or he is engrossed sexually, right? This I keep using this word because the context here shows Ammon as sexually hungry for Tamar, and he was like this on account of his sister. Now, this on account is not, it doesn't mean because of his sister. He was sexually engrossed, frustrated with regards to the sister, Tamar, that he made himself ill. Now, this made himself ill is to appear ill. And this is a ploy, right? This is a ploy. Now, this other phrase here for she was a virgin, and you need to understand that this word here is a very specific word. This word is betula, a very specific word with regards to her virginity. And although it's called virgin, generally you find that she would be hidden at home most of the time, not out there wandering around. And it seemed too difficult for Amnon to do anything to her. And it's probably because she was a virgin, a betula, and she was hidden at home, that Amnon had no way to, I guess, to hatch, to approach her. I think that would be a way to say that. To do anything to her means to approach her, to do things to her, and this would be bad things, right? This would be evil things, sexual things. Verse 3. Verse 3 says, and Amnon had a friend. Now, friend would be a close neighbor, right? You could say that he is a neighbor, a fellow, a companion, Uh, and his name was Yonadav, the son of Shimya. That's David's brother. Now, although it says that he was a friend, based on what we are reading here, Shimya is the uncle, right? It's David's brother. And Yonadav was a clever man. Now, we need to talk about this clever man shortly. So understand that Amnon and Shimea, this is an uncle. But it is in guise of a friend, meaning he's a very close companion to Amnon, uh, and they can share ideas together. And that's a description of how the uncle is so close to Amnon. Shimea is the uncle and Yonadav is the son. So you find that this companion is, how should you say, this would be the cousin. And they are good friends together, right? Now, this idea of a clever man, now you need to see this. The idea here is that this is Hakam, which generally is translated as wise. But in this case, we will say that he is a shrewd man, right? Shrewd man. He is a sly man, right? So you can see that it is the negative of wise, right? The negative of wise. Although the word is commonly used for wise, but we're now looking at the negative aspect of wise, and that would be shrewd. Thinking very cunningly, right? I think we can say that, cunningly. Very cunning man. So the ideas that he has is not for good, but it's really for evil. Many words in Hebrew has both a positive and a negative side. And in this case, Hakam, being positive or wise, also have a negative implication. In verse 4, it says, and this would be and then, after we are told the background story, and then this is Yonadav, right? This is Yonadav. He says, why are you, the king's son, David's son, so depressed morning after morning? And it says, the word depressed here literally looks needy. He is not looking like a proud son of the king. He's looking so forlorn, maybe you could use that word, morning after morning. And he says, why don't you tell me? And so Amnon told him, he says, I am in love with Tamar, the sister of my brother Avshalom. So it says here, I love her would be the word. I love her, Tamar, the sister of Avshalom. To be in love, this is a more modern expression. Now we see in verse 5, then would be, and then Yonadav said to him, says, why don't you lie down on your couch? And why don't you, this word here, pretend to be ill, literally means make yourself sick. And then when your father comes to see you, then you say to him, please have my sister Tamar come and give me food to eat. Uh, and that's basically what is being said. And have her prepare the food in my eyes. My sight means my eyes, so that I may see it and eat from her hand. And this is the ploy. This is the ploy to attract Tamar to come, because Tamar is called a Betullah, a virgin, as usually at home and kept out of sight in that sense. Now in verse 6 says, so, and this would be, and then Amnon took the suggestion of Yonadav. He laid down, and it says here, he pretended to be ill. Now, this word pretended is supplied by the translator. It says here, he caused himself to be ill, right? Caused himself to be sick. So yes, by interpretation, it does mean that he is now pretending to be sick when he's not really sick. And so when David came, this would be when is, and then the King David came to see him. And then after that, when he saw him, and then Amnon said to the king, please have my sister Tamar come and make me a couple of pastries in my sight, that I may eat from her hand. Now, this word pastries, how would you say? Uh, a couple of pastries is translated as cakes or dumplings, right? Dumplings. A couple, literally here, means two. Not a couple, but two. Two cakes or two dumplings in my sight, that I may eat from her hand, to let Tamar feed him. Verse 7. And so, and then David sent. Now remember, like in chapter 11, whenever you read the word sent, shalak, it is always about a messenger. And so this one is a correct inference. And went to the house to Tamar, not for Tamar. You can say for, but it's Tamar's house, saying, go now to your brother Amnon's house, and then prepare food for him. Now, this is the suggestion of these making pastries as food. And verse 8, and then after she was fetched, and then Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was lying in bed. He was lying down in the couch. And then she took dough, and then she kneaded it, and then she made pastries. And again, the word pastries here might be translated as dumplings, right? Dumplings in his eyes, and baked the pastries. Now, this word bake, I think is better translated as boil, right? She boiled the dumplings. And so the whole idea of cooking in front of Ammon is that there is no big fire. And so this is about boiling the dumplings. Verse 9, it says, and then she took the tray and then served the dumplings to him. I guess this word is to pour out, right? Pour out. And so it was in a pot boiling, it was poured out to him. And then we read that then he refused, right? And then he refused to eat. And then Amnon said, get everyone to leave me. And so everyone left him. From here, we see that the room is empty. There's nobody else there. Verse 10. And then Amnon said to Tamar, bring the food into the bedroom, meaning come with the bread, right? Or come with the food into the room. Now, this room here would be his chamber. So it is translated as bedroom, or this would be the inner room. And then it says that I may eat from your hand, or you may feed me in that sense, right? And then Tamar took the dumplings which she had made and then brought them into the inner room to her brother Amnon. Verse 11 is the ultimate plan of Amnon. It says here, and then she brought them. This word brought means, and then she approached. She approached him so that he can eat, and by hand, right? She's trying to feed him with the hand. So she scooped it up, and so he says, and then we have this sequence. And then he took hold of her. This word took hold of her literally means, how should you say? He took hold of her means he was firm with her. Okay. So instead of just took hold of her, he was firm with her. And then said, after he was firm with her, he may have been taking hold of her hand and being very firm to instruct her. And then the word said here could also mean a number of things. It can mean to charge her, because he is now in control. And he says this, come. And this word is not sleep. This word here is lie down, which means to have sex. Lie down with me, my sister. Now, at this juncture, I think I need to highlight some very important references, and this would be in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 9. And just like in First Samuel, Second Samuel chapter 11, much of what we are discussing now is done in private. But it is evil to actually lie down with the daughter of your father. That is what I wanted to point out to you. And this is in Leviticus 18:19. But because this has to do with public, what we are reading now, again, just like in chapter 11 of 2 Samuel, this is now done in private. This is after the fact we find out. And this is what Amnon had done with the sister. But principally, of course, there seems to be a violation if they were caught. If Amnon were caught, this would be a what we call a Mosaic law punishment. Now in verse 12, verse 12 says, but this would be and then. She said to him, this is the reply. Says, no, my brother. Says, do not violate me. Now, this word violate means do not humiliate me. Do not mishandle me. Says, don't do this. For such a thing is not done in Israel. Why? Because of Leviticus 18:9. Now, it may be done in other nations, but not in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful sin. Now, this word disgraceful sin, in the Hebrew, is disgrace. It is also immoral, right? Immoral act. It is also senseless act. It is also a wanton deed. So basically, this word here is Tamar's response that whatever he's planning to do, it is disgraceful, right? It is disgraceful. It is immoral. It is senseless, and it is wanton. It says, do not execute, do not perform this. Now, in verse 13, it says, and then, which is missing here, it says, and then for me, where could I clear myself of my shame? This would be a scorn, right? This is a reproach. This is a shame. This is a disgrace. Because she is a woman. And how is she going to walk away from it? Right? This is what rid is, walk away from it. Now the next portion here says, and for you, you'll be like one of the fools in Israel. Now this word fool here literally means that he would be seen as someone who is foolish, someone who is a fool, and someone who is senseless if he did that. And this is her plea. This is, now, then, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. Now, what does this mean? He will not hold back. Withhold me means hold back. And in so doing, this really means you could speak to the king and to marry me. And then she would not have any problems if you look at it that way. Now, that was the conversation. Doesn't make it right, but she is trying to present a case where it is all very public. As you can see, it is to speak to the king, make it official that you want to marry Tamar, right? But that was never the intent of Amnon, right? That was not the intent of Amnon. And so look at what he did in verse 14. Now, all of this is still in secret. Nobody knows about this. Verse 14, and he would not listen to her, since he was stronger than she, and he violated her and slept with her. Now, this one here is an A and a B. The word violated her would be mishandled her. Slept with her means to have sex with her. In both cases, there was a sexual act. Right? Both talks about the same, but the value of the action is one of a humiliation and a mishandling, and this sexual act has no meaning whatsoever. Verse 15, then, this is and then. Notice, the whole chapter starts with Amnon says he loved her, and after violating her, Amnon hated her with a very great hatred. And what has happened is, after violating her, the love turned to hatred. So he didn't really love her. He was only loving her to want to lie with her. And indeed, the hatred which he hated her was greater than the love which he had loved her. The wanting her is less than pushing her away and disgracing her. And finally, this word here, and then Amnon said to her, get up and walk. And this one is walk away, leave. Verse 16, and then she said to him, says, no, this is wrong in sending me away, is greater than the other that you have done to me. Now, this whole idea here is this is wrong means the inducement, the reason, right? This is wrong, the reason, the cause, the cause of the evil. Now, we don't have these words here. The cause of the evil is greater than the other. And there are two things here that we need to pay attention. One is sending me away. The other, that you have done to me. So notice we have 1 and 2. I think we need to understand this. In the ancient Hebrew understanding, when you have sex with a woman, and in this case, an unmarried woman, and she being a virgin as well, being hidden, ready for marriage, this means that you would have married her in the course of the act, right? By the act itself, you have married her, and that is what he has done to her by having sex with her. Is a peculiar treatment of marriage. And now he says, if you send me away, that would be a divorce. That would tantamount to be a divorce. Right? This is one and this is two. This is the typical understanding of a Hebrew culture of those days. They don't have the formality of, I guess, pouring tea, tea ceremony, or any wedding wedding service. There's none of those, particularly in those days. And the copulation of the man and the woman signifies marriage or the consummation of the marriage, and is treated as being married. And now Amnon has done both. He actually had sex with her, and then he is sending her away. And so he would not listen to her. That is the end result. Verse 17. And then he called his young man who attended him and said, now throw this woman out. Now, this word, throw this woman out, is send her away. That is the meaning of this word. It's not throw. It is to send this woman away of my presence. So send her away from this, and then lock the door behind her. So this whole idea here is completely kicking her out of his presence, which is a similitude of a divorce, and that is a very sad occasion for the girl. Actually, if you see that, this entire episode is has leaves a bad taste, right, in the mouth, right, in the mouth. Now we go on to verse 18. Verse 18 says, and she had a long sleeve garment. Now, a long sleeve garment would say that a long undergarment, a linen garment, and you say that it goes all the way to the hands. That's why it says it's a long sleeve garment, right? It's a long garment that's supposed to cover the hand and feet, right? So it's a very long garment. And this is how the virgin daughters of the king dressed themselves in the coats, right? In the coats. They call this the coats. This is the kind of garment. And these are the virgin daughters. And again, it uses the word Batulah to signify that that the women are of particular class in the family of David, and all of them who are virgins, meaning never known a man and is not married yet, are all dressed in a peculiar way to denote their unmarried status. Then his attendant took her out and then locked the door behind her. Verse 19. We have here, after she left, and then she took ashes on her head and tore her long sleeve garment that was on her. Now, what does this mean? She tore, let's do one by one. Ashes, ashes is remorse, Remorse. What else do you understand? Ashes. Ashes will be remorse. Uh, is mourning. She's now in such a plight that she's been mishandled, abused, married, and divorced all on the same day, and put them on her head as a symbol of mourning. And then she tore. Now, this word tore is tore into pieces, which I don't think that's the case. I think this is to rend. Rend means to tear apart. Right? Rend, I said, I think it's to tear apart. And so this was what happened. And this is to demonstrate that she is no longer a virgin. And then she put her hand on her head, and then she walked, and then she cried out as she went. So this is a very sad affair, very, very sad affair. And you could say that she is, how would you say, she has been violated in secret, uh, kicked out. Uh, she has been, I would say, shamed, disgraced. She's lost everything, and so she was crying out, right, out loudly. She was indeed a very, very sad woman on that day. Now we will end with verse 20. In verse 20, it says, and then this is, and then after everything was over, and then Avshalom, her brother, said to her, he says, have Amnon, your brother, been with you? Uh, and this idea here, with you, is together. Now, if you understand this, just a very small, peculiar, a very common word, but used in this case, this is by insinuating, this is an implication, implying. If Amnon slept with her, that was the question. He says, and now keep silent. Silent means pretend to be deaf, right? Keep silent is pretend to be deaf, that you don't hear anything, and so you pretend to be dumb as well. And she said, and so don't say anything and pretend you don't hear anything, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this matter to heart. Don't do anything, basically. Do not act. And so, in the end, by his advice, and so Tamar remained. Remain means sit at home. And then, this word is, and then, was isolated in her brother's Avshalom's house. Now, this word here, isolated, I think we could say that you could say that she was left alone, in her brother's house. I think that would be a good way of saying isolate. She was left alone, all by herself. in her brother's house. Now, we would take a break here in verse 20, and then we will continue tomorrow.